The Chicago Bears have been a hot topic in 2024. After an NFL offseason where they got guys like Caleb Williams, Keenan Allen, and Rome Odunze, the Chicago Bears have been held in very high regards by the majority of NFL fans. However, with many fans being high on the Chicago Bears, there have also been many who have been calling them a tad bit overrated. So in today's video, what I wanted to do was discuss whether or not the Chicago Bears are actually overrated. So in this video, we're going to be breaking it down into 3 different segments. We're going to start off by talking about why people believe the Chicago Bears are a tad bit overrated. Then we'll talk about the opposite, some reasons why I personally believe they might not be overrated. And then at the very end, I'll give you guys my official answer as to whether or not the Chicago Bears are overrated. Let's hop into the video. So as I mentioned earlier, we're going to be starting off by talking about why the Chicago Bears might be a tad bit overrated. And I do think there are a number of reasons why people believe the Chicago Bears are an overrated team. One of the reasons why many people think the Chicago Bears are overrated is obviously because of Caleb Williams. He is a very controversial figure within many NFL conversations, with many NFL fans believing in him wholeheartedly, such as somebody like myself who does believe in Caleb Williams for the most part. But then you have kind of a smaller segment of people who just hate Caleb Williams for whatever reason and just don't think he's going to pan out at all at the NFL level. Now, I'm not here to personally argue whether or not Caleb Williams is going to be a good quarterback in his rookie year, but I do think they do have some good points as to whether or not Caleb Williams is actually going to be good. But I do think we do have to at least take into consideration that Caleb Williams is a young NFL prospect quarterback who's never played a single snap of football, so obviously he's extremely inexperienced, who is now having all the expectations in the world to get this Chicago Bears team to at least a successful spot this upcoming season. Are those really unfair expectations for Caleb Williams? Probably, but I do think that the majority of people do have those expectations on him, so it's just something that he's going to have to live with. But I do think it does at least give another reason as to why the Chicago Bears might be overrated. It's really hard to rely on a rookie quarterback to carry you to a playoff spot. We've only seen it a handful of times these past couple years, with of course one of the more recent ones being CJ Stroud of the Houston Texans. Obviously CJ Stroud was incredible in his rookie year, and if Caleb Williams can be 90% of what CJ was in his rookie year, then the Chicago Bears are probably looking pretty good. But to expect Caleb Williams to have this historic rookie season, in my opinion, is probably unfair to him. And I do think it does provide at least one really solid reason as to why the Chicago Bears may not be able to make a deep run this upcoming season. They're a younger team with a lot of inexperienced talent, guys like Caleb Williams, Rome Odunze, Velus Jones, Tevin Jenkins, Darnell Wright, a number of players defensively. This is not a team that is just flooded with older veterans who are looking to make their last push to win a championship. This is not a team that has a bunch of older veterans who are in their prime now who want to win a championship now. This is a team that is building towards the future while also being able to contend in the modern day. Yes, you have a couple of older guys like DeAndre Swift, Keenan Allen, some other guys on defense. Like, I understand that, but at the end of the day, those guys are not a part of the long-term plan of the Chicago Bears team. This Bears team wants to be able to contend with Caleb Williams for hopefully the next 10 to 15 years. Another reason as to why many people may not believe in this Chicago Bears team is going to be that they are in one of the toughest divisions in the NFL. The NFC North is full of amazing talented players, from the Green Bay Packers to the Detroit Lions, and then of course to the Minnesota Vikings. All 3 of these teams have a good blend of veteran leadership who can help win now, while also having some young guys who can help you win towards the future. Looking at Detroit, you obviously had Jared Goff, who's one of those quarterbacks who can easily lead a team to a Super Bowl, and surrounding Jared Goff is one of the most talented teams within the NFL, and I do believe that the Detroit Lions are maybe the best team within the NFC. Then you have the Green Bay Packers, and if we get what Jordan Love was looking like in the second half of last year, we're talking about a quarterback that is easily a top 10 quarterback. And this Packers roster, just like the Lions, is also extremely talented, and in my opinion, they are really just a consistent quarterback season away from being very good next year. Then you have the Minnesota Vikings, who in a lot of ways are pretty similar to the Chicago Bears, where they have a good mix of older guys who want to win now while also having extremely young players like JJ McCarthy, who is going to be building towards the future for that team. There are also some expectations on Minnesota this upcoming season, and whether or not those are fair are up for maybe another question in another day. But at the bare minimum, if JJ McCarthy can be a solid quarterback next year, that's a good enough team that can make any matchup against the Bears a very tough one. So the fact that you have to play these teams 6 times this upcoming season to go along along with a number of very difficult games throughout your schedule, it doesn't really bode well for the Chicago Bears. Now, I do personally expect the Chicago Bears to perform somewhat well against these teams. Obviously, the Lions and Packers are going to be some extremely tough matchups, but within those 6 games, they can go 3-3 or 4-2. You're looking pretty solid for the Chicago Bears. Another reason why many people have some skepticism about the Chicago Bears team is going to be because of their head coach, Matt Eberflus. Thus far, with him as the head coach, the Chicago Bears have done damn near nothing. They have been one of the worst teams consistently under Matt Eberflus, and they decided to bring him back for another season this upcoming season. Now, whether or not you guys thought that was the right move, that's the decision they ultimately made, and I personally have some skepticism regarding Matt Eberflus, but at the end of the day, he is a defensive-minded head coach, and I do think that the Chicago Bears are going to have a pretty awesome defense next year, so as long as the defense is good, then I do think he's going to get the job done. Offensively speaking, what you really want is a really solid offensive coordinator, and I do think they have one down here in Chicago. But alright, we talked about some of the reasons why this team might be overrated, and if I missed any, you guys can let me know in the comment section below. But now let's talk about why this team is not overrated and why they're actually going to be really awesome next year. And I think the biggest reason why the Chicago Bears are being held as one of the better teams in next year's season is because of the overall talent of this Bears roster. If we take everything at face value, if you look at this offense, Caleb Williams is going to have a number of weapons to work with. DeAndre Swift, Roschon Johnson, Khalil Herbert, and Travis Homer are a tandem of running backs that is just maybe one of the best tandems in the entire NFL. Then you have this stout receiving core of guys like DJ Moore, Keenan Allen, and Rome Odunze, not to mention some other younger guys like Dante Pettis and Velus Jones. We'll see what those guys can do behind them. You obviously have the young tight end and Cole Kmet, a pretty stout offensive line. I wouldn't say it's great, but there's definitely some young pieces I'm very excited about. And defensively speaking, you have a bunch of really solid players that are going to easily be some of the top players in their respective positions. This defense is expected to take a pretty drastic step forward because of the overall completeness of this defense. And when you have a roster of this caliber, you're looking at a team that could easily win a championship. Now, let's get this out of the way. The Bears will not be winning a championship in 2024, barring Caleb Williams being Patrick Mahomes level. But if Caleb Williams can just be around a top 20-ish quarterback, I think the Chicago Bears can easily make a playoff spot because of how good the roster is around him. As long as Caleb Williams doesn't have a really bad rookie season, which, by the way, he might just very well have because, well, he's a rookie quarterback adapting to the NFL game. But in my opinion, as long as he performs relatively well, that Chicago Bears team is looking pretty good next year. And I think that's maybe another reason why the Chicago Bears should be good next year is that I do personally believe in Caleb Williams, and as long as Caleb Williams can be, as I said, around a top 20 to top 15 quarterback, they're looking at a really good team with a really solid quarterback that could easily get the job done. I think for Caleb Williams next year, the expectations should be that he's going to make the right plays on time in rhythm and then occasionally make a big play out of the pocket, one of those classic Caleb Williams types of plays. But I don't think the expectations should be for him to go crazy in year number 1. I think it should be a lot of underneath stuff, a lot of easy reads, a lot of easy things for him to get his career started in the NFL. Because I think the last thing you want for Caleb Williams is for him to have a rough rookie season on the likes of like a Troy Aikman or a Peyton Manning where it's just historically bad and then all of a sudden his confidence is zapped. What you want for Caleb Williams is to have a strong rookie campaign and then build onto it in his second and third year. Another reason why many people have a lot of faith in this Chicago Bears team is going to be because of the fact that the NFC playoffs are pretty wide open. Because in my opinion, as of right now, there's only really a handful of teams that are locks to make the playoffs. And I say locks because these are teams that have so much talent that even if they do sustain an injury or two, they should be totally fine. Of course, no team is technically a lock because who knows, maybe your starting quarterback gets out for the season and then of course you suck the rest of the year. But I think if you look at the NFC, the quote-unquote locks to make the playoffs are going to be the Eagles, the Lions, maybe the Packers could be considered a lock. Then I think you're looking at a team like the Rams and Niners and say that those teams are more than likely going to be locks in next year's playoffs. But then you have a bunch of flyer teams that could potentially make the playoffs. Teams like the Cowboys, the Bears, the Vikings, maybe the Falcons or Saints or Bucks could get in there. And then, of course, you have the Seattle Seahawks in the NFC West. Those are all teams that are going to be competing for probably wildcard spots, or maybe one of those teams could maybe win their division. So all in all, like, there's not a ton of teams that are necessarily like that top tier level teams like you see throughout the AFC. Like, if you look at the AFC, you go through each division, you have the teams like the Bills, Jets, Ravens, Bengals, Browns, Texans, Colts, Chiefs, and maybe even the Chargers next year that are all top tier teams in the NFL. Whereas in the NFC, you're really only looking at maybe 4 teams that are technically considered top NFL teams. So for a team like the Chicago Bears, if they can somehow pull off 10 or 11 wins, they're probably going to be playoff locks. Probably not division winners, but easily wild card locks. And if this team makes the wild card, then that team definitely met expectations expectations. If they did that, they're definitely not an overrated team. They're definitely, at that point, maybe an underrated team. This is a Bears team that, in my opinion, has a lot of expectations to make the playoffs, but I think that in some ways, those are pretty lofty expectations for year one of Caleb Williams, but I do understand it. It's one of the better teams in the NFL. But alright, we talked about some of the reasons why they may be overrated and some of the reasons why they're not overrated. But let me give you guys my personal opinion. My opinion of this team is this. It all depends on what your personal thought process is of the Chicago Bears. If you think the Bears are going to be a team that makes the playoffs and makes a deep playoff run, you might be slightly overrating that team a tad bit. But if your expectations are that the Bears are going to win somewhere between 8 to 9 to 10 games next year and maybe could make a wild card spot, I think you're appropriately guessing how good they're going to be next year. At the end of the day, it's extremely hard to predict how good the Chicago Bears will be because of how young this team is and because we just don't know how good Caleb Williams is going to be. So if you guys see any TikToks, Instagram posts, YouTube videos that are claiming that the Chicago Bears are overrated, I think you should probably just let them know, hey, the dude hasn't played a single snap in the NFL. We don't know how good this team is going to be. But you guys let me know in the comment section below, do you guys think this Chicago Bears team is an overrated team? And if you enjoyed the video, hit the like and subscribe button, and I love you guys. Peace.